Welcome to the Spirit Lounge. Today we are interviewing Ara Parisien, who is an international psychic medium, an author, a spiritual teacher, and all things in between. Ara's been providing these services for coming up to 30 years, I believe. Lives in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, and also channels the Council of 12, which is some subject we'll dive into a bit later. Ara also is a friend, and a cherished friend at that, and has kindly offered to do my first interview on this channel. So I just want to say welcome, Ara.
Well, thanks, Raj. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for joining today. So today I'd like to go into a few areas. One of those is some of your background around your spiritual side and when you've kind of discovered that from a young age and how those experiences led up to what you're doing now, and actually maybe 30 years ago when you started doing work. And then go into your views on the psychic and mediumship area, what the differences are between, because many people sometimes don't know the differences and whether a psychic is always a medium and the other way around. And just get your views on that, how people use it. Do people give their power away to the whole process? And I know you love the nature of energy. It's something you're very passionate about. The core of the universe and life itself is energy at its very basic and fundamental state. So let's get your views on that. And also the Council of 12. I think I'd like to just delve into the Council of 12, who they are, what they represent, your relationship to them. I think it's really interesting. So I'll try to make this about 30 to 40 minutes. So first of all, Ara, could you give us some background on you? When did you start discovering your spiritual abilities, and how were they? When you start discovering them? Were they uncomfortable when you started, and how did they develop over time, leading you to professionally offering your services?
That's always an interesting question because I don't remember being any different. So conversing, interacting with spirit, knowing things and not knowing how I knew things, that was all normal. And I didn't understand that it was different until I started seeing other people's reactions to it. So my parents obviously had a big part in all of how I started to see things and helped shape my perspective of it. Because it was so normal, I thought everybody was doing it. And one day I said something, I don't even know how old I was. I was very, very tiny. And my mother just went ballistic and asked me how I knew these particular names that I was, talking about. And I said, well, I've been talking with them, and oh, by the way, his wife is fine, right? And it turned out that I was actually having conversations with her grandfather, who had passed away like 40 years before I was even born. And his wife had had a stroke, and I had even talked about that. But I didn't know what a stroke was at that tender age. And so I'd said, she's fine, but what's a stroke? And my mom realized that there was something in her mind very wrong with what I was doing. And she tried to drill it into me that this was the devil's work and that I had to never do this again and to ignore it. And I tried. I truly tried as a child. But everything is energy, and we'll talk a lot about that later, but everything is energy and it has to go somewhere. You can't stockpile it. You can't stop it. It has to flow. And so when I tried to stop it, it flowed through me in very interesting ways that were not preferable to me. And so I began to realize that if I just let it flow, I was fine. If I tried to stop it, I wasn't fine. And so I shook my little fist at the universe and I said, okay, I'm willing to go back and just let it be what it is. Just let it go back to what it was. And I don't want this other stuff.
Mm.
And almost instantly, the negative aspects of it stopped. And I learned, because I was smart that way, that I would let it happen. I just wouldn't talk about it. So there were times when I slipped up and people would raise their eyebrows. My mom learned to ignore it after a while. But it was just so much a part of me. Like, how do you stop being who you are? Right? So
Yeah.
I grew into this and learned the language of it to a point where, as I grew into adulthood, I was then in a better position to help others discover their true nature as well.
And so how old were you when when your mother was saying it was devil's work? What
Oh,
age were you at then?
maybe 6 or 7.
Mm. And when did you kind of decide to um, let it out and professionally offer these services? And was that many years later,
Yeah,
decades
I was
later?
probably late 20s, early 30s. I began experimenting because it suddenly occurred to me that I had honed the craft via my own
Mm.
experiences. So I could anticipate things. It never stopped things from happening, but
Mm.
it allowed me to anticipate them to the point where I could view it, view the experiences that were happening around me from a different vantage point. So I wasn't as emotionally attached to what was going on. So
Could you, sorry to interrupt, could you explain as well, 'cause I think those listening would be interested to know, when you receive information, as well as it being felt, knowing, would you see images? Would you hear words? How is it all received, or is it a mixed bag and you just translate it through your spirit, emotional body, I suppose?
it all happens using all 5 of your senses. Well, actually, 6
Mm.
of your senses, right? So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
spirit can let me know it's present uh, by a sensing, knowing without having knowing, not knowing how you know. Um, Sometimes there's that audible portion. Sometimes it's external, but most of the time it's internal. There are the snippets of pictures through the mind that
Mm.
I have to pay attention to. There are times actually where I see spirit in 3D. I have no control as to when that happens, and
Mm.
I'm fine with that. Every spirit has a different reason for and intent for presenting themselves how they do. So I don't demand that they show themselves to me in 3D. It's like whatever
Mm.
is supposed to happen will happen. And my job is just to allow it and report it, right?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
all of my senses are used. I remember being in St. Louis doing a mediumship demo in front of 300 people. And when my energy is high, I tend to like be a caged animal and I'm pacing all over the place. Well, one spirit decided
Mm.
to come through to get my attention and was letting me know that they passed from a stroke. But in order for them to get my attention through everything that was going on, they numbed half of my body. So in mid-step, I almost took a tumble in front of all these people, right? And it,
Yeah.
quickly, I'm like in my mind, okay, I know you're there. You can stop that. You've got my attention, kind of thing. So then I deal with them. So they can come through any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. So in terms of platform work, I know you continue to do that. Is
Mhm.
that something that you want to continue with, or you're planning to do more of it in the future, or going to branch out away from platform work?
Well, the platform work always is exciting for me to do because there's so many different energies that I can interact with, and it
Yeah.
gives people a sense as to how it works and how effective it is and how healing it can be. So I think it's important that platform work. You might not get a full-on session that's very in depth, but you at least get an indication as to how spirit comes through and the type of things that they might say. And it's always interesting to me because on a platform, I can be delivering messages to one side, to one person, and
Mm.
three other people. And it's not because the messages are vague. Spirit's very
Mm.
evidential if you allow it to be.
Mm.
But often, and this happens more often than not, I can have someone in spirit named Roger, and I'm dealing with this person who is connected to Roger, and there will be three other people who have Rogers, right?
Mm.
So it isn't like we're saying John and Mary, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you do get the very, very unique names, at which point I want to jump up and high five spirit, and I can't because I
Mm.
have to be professional, right? But
Yeah.
they're just amazing when they start to work with you. It's
I
exciting.
want to go in. Yeah, I want to go into spirit before we jump into the other areas which
Mhm.
people are more familiar with. And I'd like to get your view on when we say spirit, what we mean by that. Um, because for me, I think there's sometimes a tendency for people when they have readings, psychic mediumship readings, and we refer to spirit as being where we're receiving information, these images, the avatars present themselves either in form or energy or feeling. But the person's who's asking for the service may feel themselves not attached to spirit or different or separate from spirit. So spirit is something else which you're channeling, and they're not part of spirit at all, and that you're just receiving, they're just receiving information from you. Could you give your explanation to what is spirit and that relationship to us in our physical lives and the unity of it? I know it's kind of going into the energy space, but I'd like to get your view on spirit itself. What is that, and how should it be perceived in your view?
Well, I can only speak to how it works for me, and we all work so differently. I only deal in energy because I have had this understanding that energy is all there is. So when I
Mm-hmm.
sit with a client, I'm focused on their energy, and that establishes a connection whereby any loved one, that energy will come through and shift the pattern. So when I start working, I'm not calling forward specific people because you don't want me doing that. You want the best person in the perfect moment, and spirit knows that. So it's all energy. It's all energy that ripples and forms patterns that I pay attention to, and sometimes those patterns will be flashed to me as symbols that are decipherable by me. It's the language that I've learned. And then it compels me almost to say certain things in a certain way. And then that way, it allows us to interact with the personality that was.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
in that way, the client can claim, yeah, that's my mom, that's my dad, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that in itself is entirely healing to know that this energy lives on, whether it's in physical form or not. Relationships still are occurring and continuing on, even when one is in physical and one is not. And it's just that a new rapport must be built between them because now the relationship has changed a little bit. But it's all energy, and it's all energy for the greater good. So whatever
Mm-hmm.
ripples and patterns I perceive and am
Mm-hmm.
compelled to message out, um, or exactly what that person needs at the time. There's no death. There's
Yeah.
only energy changing form. But that energy, if everything is energy, which I happen to believe, then there's absolutely nowhere where energy is not. So the minute you ask about your loved one, boom, they're right there, right? Because they're ever present, because energy is ever present. So in that respect, it makes my job a little easier because I have this understanding that energy is like right there all the time, and I should be able to tap into it. If I do not receive the ripples and vibrational patterns, it just means that it may not be the perfect time for that person to have spirit insert themselves into their reality. That's all. And then we can't dismiss the human form that I just may not be at my peak that day, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, it happens. We're human too.
Yeah, I was going to ask the question, or you touched on something I was going to ask. When someone books a reading and saves a mediumship session, can they influence, or through their intention, if they send a really powerful intention out to spirit and say, I need to speak to whoever they want trying to contact that's dear to them, if they put an intention out powerfully, is it a guarantee that the personality of that being passed will come, or will it be, or will spirit really define whether or not which personality appears to you and speaks, channels through you, passes information on?
I always encourage everyone who comes for mediumship to send out the intent, because that makes them part of the whole process. Whether their target arrives during the session or not is not up to me. It certainly isn't a reflection of them not being loved. It just means that they can see the bigger picture of that soul, and they know the time is not perfect to insert themselves into their reality. So I leave it up to spirit. Some people come to me and they say, I really, really, really need to talk to my mom, right? And my heart goes out to them, and it doesn't stop me from asking. I'll ask for mom to come through, but I have to leave the answer up to spirit, because spirit knows what we need as opposed to what we really, 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 really want, right? There's a difference. So typically spirit will come through. What I find always interesting is the real eager beaver ones that just really want it fast and furious and mom to come through right away. That's when spirit will sit down and take their time, and I'll deal with 4 spirits before they get the one that they wanted, right? So, and I'm not in control of that either. Every energy wants to at least say hi if they have the opportunity, right? So I just deal with them. But it's interesting because sometimes you might want someone specific to come through and they don't. And then you get some perceived remote personality that wants to come through. So you want mom, but I give you great Aunt Martha, who died 50 years before you were born, and you feel no connection. Spirit loves to come through and let you know that it doesn't matter that you never met in physical form. They know you now because we are all one. We're all the same energy. How can we not? So often great Aunt Martha will give words to the answer that client has been seeking. And when you think in those terms, hearing it from mom might make you feel good, all warm and fuzzy, but hearing it from someone you never even met can have more of an impact. And spirit knows that too.
Yeah. So what's that's the mediumship side of things, but
Right.
what is the general difference between psychic services and a medium? What are the main difference between the two services, the two approaches?
Well, they're 2 different frequencies of work. if someone comes to me and they want to discuss life issues, that's one level, that's one frequency where I'm dealing specifically in their energy to see how they got from first breath this lifetime to right this moment as they're sitting before me. So I can see the little trail, the little path they've woven for themselves, and I can see how their physical body may be handling all of that. And if they have any pockets of energy that they've acquired from all those experiences that may not be of benefit, we can work to become more proactive so that it allows them to step into the life they actually came here to live. So there's a lot of well-beingness that happens in the psychic work. Sure, we discuss, relationships, finances, purpose, life path, all that kind of thing. But it's from a completely different vantage point that typically functions on a specific frequency. When mediumship occurs, that's a higher frequency. And what happens with me is that I lift my vibration and spirit meets me halfway, and we do this little energetic dance where it's just this flip where we connect. And that's when I get the vibrational shifts and the symbology and the pictures and such. So that's always really interesting work, for sure.
And have you found in your practice that is it shifting towards psychic readings and mediumship, or is it still a fair balance?
I think there are some things in this world that all human beings want answers to. They are looking to be happy, right? And so a lot of times they'll be looking outside of themselves for that happiness, and they just want direction and clarity, when they can actually do that for themselves, but they're too distracted by life events in order to be quiet enough to see, right? That's to me what people are actually coming for, is give me the clarity. Give me the clarity. I need to know, and I need to know what's coming. And, should I do this and should I do that? And that is one question I do not take head on, because it's not up to anyone to determine where you're going and what you're going to choose. That's what free will is for. But what we can do is look at the energetic projection. If you keep going where you are energetically, then these options may present themselves. But if you make a different choice, then it shoots the stream off in a different direction where these opportunities could present themselves. So their future, everyone's future, when they come to a psychic, they need to understand that their future is being forged by every thought and every feeling they have right now. So when you begin to understand that and live that, then there are no surprises. You know exactly what you're walking into, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it's absolutely multiple timelines created by every action, word, thought, and intention, every microsecond of every day. So you're absolutely 100% right there. Do you think for psychic readings themselves, they come for you with guidance, or do you think people have given their power away to psychics out there to make decisions for them, rather than coming for validation of an intuitive feeling that they have, or a guidance for something they kind of already know or want help? They've already decided to want validation for something, or do you think people are reaching out and constantly? Some have psychic readings all the time, and maybe too regularly. Do you think they're giving their power away to the whole process and psychics in general sometimes?
Sometimes I think they do. Sometimes I think the questions and the sincerity and depth of intensity in which they ask those questions, they are pleading for someone else to take over. And that is not of benefit. They're here in physical form to live their life, and they're missing out on the magic, and they're missing out on the adventure. And you're right. I think that sometimes there are those service workers who will engage with the same client over and over and over and over and over again, like weekly. And I don't think that's a benefit at all. I'm not passing judgment. It's just an observation, and it's a way that I'm not choosing to provide my service, because for me, in what I provide, is my whole focus is to empower that individual to understand that they're more than they think they are, and they're more powerful than they could ever imagine. And when they hook into that and start experiencing the nature of their own power, they won't need to ask those questions. So mine is more of a preventative thing, rather than giving advice and giving them answers. Because really, when you go to a service provider and you're asking questions like, what was I in a past life? That's all very interesting. People are really, really excited about that field. And it's fun. I enjoy doing the past life regressions, but the past life regressions, how do you validate?
Yep.
I mean, I can tell you were somebody, King Lear or something, just something big and fantastic. And you're going, oh, okay. But how do you know that's true? Right? So my thing as well, my commitment to my work is to give the evidence of it. So I could give you information on the past life, but then I can also pinpoint where you're expressing that past life in your present life. So that makes it a little more solid. The other thing that I find really interesting with past lives is the people that come in and say, I know I'm an old soul.
Yeah.
I just look at them and say, oh, that's great, right? Usually the ones that say that are not that, because an old soul would never announce themselves, right? And the other thing is I love people who come in and say, oh, I know I was Queen Victoria or Cleopatra. And they all...
Yeah, I've heard that a lot, where there's many people have past life regressions and everyone seems to have been royalty at some point or a powerful person at some point, and everyone seems to have been the same powerful person at the same time.
And I
so
think that's an inclination to project something so that you feel more powerful in the moment and in your present life, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But I've always questioned why no one comes and says they think they were Hitler.
Absolutely, yeah.
Nobody's the bad guy, even though it has to happen because there needs to be balance, right?
Yeah. So, and that's why I think I will say something. I think it comes down to the how genuine the person, the psychic or medium or spiritual teacher or whoever it may be that someone is contacting or reaching out to for support, guidance, help. It's really important for people to do their homework. Absolutely. And word of mouth is like gold when it comes to these things, and asking people, trusted people that you sincerely trust, for recommendations on people you can reach out for these services, because I strongly believe that out there's the vast majority are not. They're really just doing some odd intuition, reading, understanding how to read tarot cards and selling their services and making quite a lot of money out of the vulnerable and those who need support. I will say Ara is genuine. I'll say that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. She's one of the most genuine people I know.
The one thing that, if I can just add to what you said, when it comes to the kind of workers you were just alluding to, I think we need to understand as well that with how many billion people walking and roaming around the planet, you're only attracted to frequencies that are a match for you. So it doesn't matter if they're uh, just starting out or at it forever or whatever. There's someone for everyone for the lessons that the soul requires. So, in as much as the client may be seeking out a psychic who just will know that they'll get the answers that they want, that's a lesson in itself on a soul level. But so is it a lesson for the service provider too. So it's all good, it's all perfect, and everyone, there's someone for everyone to get what they need on a soul level. So yeah, it all works.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. It makes sense as well. Can anyone? I do strongly believe, and I kind of know that people are born with open sight, and it was intended for them to have open sight to do their work in its lifetime. And sometimes they decide to embrace it either immediately or later in life. But I think that the psychic part of things, because we are all internally psychic, I think it's available to everyone. So what's your view on that everyone has the ability to actually see into themselves intuitively, psychically, open up this sight beyond sight that we all have intrinsically within self? And how do you coach people to do that?
Firstly, I think every person is intuitive. They're absolutely intuitive. That's something in everyone's toolbox the minute they arrive on this planet and take their first breath. It's already established through the soul pattern when it will reach its pinnacle, when it will begin to open and show itself. I, for some reason, before I came here, chose to just be open, right? And just, as soon as my little lungs took my first breath, it was like, okay, you're on, right? In order for it to become psychic, we need to learn the language of it. So when you're intuitive, you get this randomness happening in your life. And then after the fact, you always say things like, oh, and I knew that was going to happen. I knew, right? But nobody tends to trust it because it's so random in nature. But once you start to play with it and you start to, just actually play and just have fun, that's how you learn the language of it. So if you go for a walk every day and you tend to go the same way every day, really ask yourself, should I go left or right? I always go right. What should I do? What should I do? And feel. It's the feeling that's important with the intuitive value. And just say, well, this is how I would feel if I went left today. Go left, right? You may not know that it was the right decision, and that's okay. This is where you build your trust factor, right? So just go with it, play with it, have fun with it. It's not something dire. It's the people that run around, oh, I know someone's going to die today. That's not empowering. It's fear-based, and when it's fear-based, it's ego-based. So that's where that's coming from. So the minute you start to play with it and learn the language of it, which merely means how it feels to be right and how it feels to be not so right, then you can start relying on it, calling it forward. So when you call it forward for those answers, you will instinctively know which one feels better. So then you start relying on it. It's not so random, it's in the moment, and then you've exercised that muscle right into the psychic value, and you can live by your psychic value. So we all have that capacity, but not everyone is here to do that. So, and some people will open later in life. There's no rhyme, no reason, but the one thing I do know is that it will happen at the perfect time. The mediumship, we're all the same energy. How can we not know? And it sort of is shown to us by how many people. Have you ever heard say, oh, I saw my father who died 3 years ago walk through the living room yesterday? Just really quickly, it was just a flash, but I know it was him. But they say, but I'm not a medium, so it can't be really happening.
Hmm.
All the same energy. These things happen all the time. What happens is, it for some reason and in some way, your energy frequency bumped up and matched your loved one
Hmm.
in that particular moment. But the moment you
Yeah.
recognize that spirit, something snapped in your ego consciousness, like, how can this be happening? Who's that? Oh my God.
Hmm.
And the event is over. It's easier for spirit to make dream visitations than it is to do a Las Vegas floor show in your living room, even though, we all want that, right? But it's easier in dream state.
Yeah. So where do prophetic visions come from? Where, people have often said that they've seen an event before it happens, either in the dream state or meditative state. Where do those prophetic visions come from, and how is the energy play
Well,
around
it
how they
comes from
receive?
self. It comes from, and this is really important to understand as well. It comes from self because the soul has access to everything happening at the same time. There is no time. Everything is in the now. So that's past, present, future, all at the same time. So it's that soul that is pushing that picture out, but it's always going to be influenced by your belief structure. And it's another way for soul to say, hey, this is where you're going with this. Is this what you want? Does this feel good? So it's a nice check and balance. But a lot of people will get that propheticness happening and run around trying to prevent things, and it's impossible. No, nothing is impossible. I'm sorry. It's unlikely and improbable that you'll ever be able to make an impact to stop something from happening. It's already happened, really. As soon as you dream it, it's already happened because everything is right now. So
Yeah.
that's where it comes from. I channeled prophetic messages for years, but they were so cryptic, I had no idea what they meant. And it wasn't until Princess Diana died back in the 90s that I had this really funny resonation. I was like, no, I wrote about that. I channeled something about that. And I did. 3 years prior to her death, I channeled that she was going to die in a car accident. Well, it isn't about, look what I could do, right? I couldn't stop it. The whole thing is this has the opportunity to manifest in the world reality. We're not telling you, or it's not being told to you to stop it, but we're telling you there will be events where you're going to have to need to hold the space. That's it. That's it. That's all it's for. So yeah, I have a very funny take on prophetic stuff, right? Obviously. But yeah, I just find that it isn't told as a profound vision. It's just told to us because that something big is about to occur and it's time to hunker down. If you're a light worker, you need to hunker down and hold your space, right? Because that's what's going to impact the world, not the knowledge of the experience. We're all going to bear witness to it.
Yeah. What's the power of free will and its influence on what people seek constantly as purpose or the fulfillment of it? What is the impact of free will itself and the importance of it, and how we need to understand free will?
I love free will. I love it. It's
Yes, so do I.
it's free will, it's freeing, right? And all it's saying is that you have the capacity to choose. Think of that. In every moment, as you said earlier, every millisecond, you have the ability to choose, which means you're in charge. You choose the reality you're going to experience. You choose how to feel. You choose what you're going to do. Choosing. The mere fact that we have this ability to choose releases us from any kind of concept of victimhood, or it should. really. Free will is huge. It's huge. And
Yeah.
I find it exhilarating, and it can impact your life any which way you use it. And on a global level, the collective free will plays out all the time. Every time
Yeah.
you look out your window, there's a collective free will unfolding. Doesn't make it right or wrong, it just is. And anything you witness out your window is already past tense. So
Yeah.
we don't need to kind of twist ourselves in knots because we see something we don't like.
Mm.
We have
Yeah.
we have the ability to choose not to give our attention to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Free will, I believe, I feel kind of know that free will is actually the most powerful force
Mhm.
that exists. It governs everything,
Mhm.
every manifestation of anything universally, multi-universally, right down to our own individual lives. Everything is
Well,
governed
it's
through the force.
interesting because,
The force of free will directs the energy as it is.
well, the free will, your ability to choose, is what
Mm.
automatically pulses to the entire universe and source itself to abide by that choice. Can you
Mm.
imagine if people understood that
Mm.
that's what the free will is doing? That you're choosing and commanding the entire universe to align with what you're seeing, believing, feeling, saying, thinking. That's huge.
Mm.
That's
Yeah.
power.
Yeah. And do you think humanity is particularly in recent times, giving their free will, which is the same as sovereignty, liberty, independence, too freely away to others to decide for them what
Well,
is
there's
sensible or not?
there's implementing your free will, which is what we're sovereign to experience. And
Mm-hmm.
then there is relinquishing our free will in order for someone else to make the decisions and choices for us, because we don't know ourselves well enough or understand our power well enough that we could ever make a difference.
Mm. Yep.
So in that respect, I think it's just a relinquishing because they don't know themselves and their own power.
Yeah. And so the nature of energy, I know this subject is passionate, so I'm going to let you free flow on this one. But if you could go into the nature of energy, not just, you could start how it impacts our lives and how we need to understand it in terms of our day-to-day lives, how we manifest, but just the encompassing state of energy and its flux universally, how everything is unified with spirit, all is one. There's not really any separation of what our mind creates. I'll let you take the platform for energy because I know that's a huge subject for
Well,
you.
I love it because it's so basic. Energy
Mm.
is all there is. So what else is there to know? The Council of 12 actually told me one day, the moment you begin to understand the nature of the energy of who you are, you will never have to ask another question again.
Mm.
And I was like, whoa, I want that, right? So I started learning from them that everything is energy and we're in these physical bodies to experience the manifestations of the energy focus that we give it. So if you
Mm.
give your attention to something that you don't like, you're going to get more of it, because
Mm.
the universe only has one job description, and it's one word: respond. That's it. So it's not stopping and saying, Raj, you've been waiting a long time for this, so we're going to cut you some slack. Even though, you haven't been thinking about it, we're going to give you something you want. Universe does not do that.
Mm-hmm.
If someone wants to remain in victimhood, then they will. But the nature of energy is that it's at our command at all times. And I don't use that word command lightly. Whatever we're focused upon, whatever we're thinking of, that is what we are unfolding into our reality. We have that much power. So uh, when I say command, command is just focus. Focus is your power, and you're co-creating with the energy that creates worlds. You can't have a better co-creator at your disposal. When we think about things, we humans, on a human level, we see a car, we see pavement, we see a bird, we see a chair, and it's all different. But it's not. It's all the same. It's all the same energy, just vibrating at a different frequency. So when we begin to understand that, that's when we begin to understand the concept that we are all one.
Yeah.
We're
yeah. It's the same principle that The Secret was pitching in the book and in the video and film, and also I think it's Tony Robbins said, "Energy flows where attention goes." It's the same. It's all founded on this same universal principle and statement of, well, energy. Well, energy is the core of everything, and where we direct it will dictate what manifests.
It's who we are. So if you want to get somewhere in your life, somewhere specific, you work with the energy to create it. You don't get in your car and just sit there and not turn it on and expect to go to Tennessee. Right? There's things that you must do to get there. And so that energy is there for you to focus and morph into the reality that you prefer. That's what it is. It's who we are. So we're morphing ourselves into our own reality just by giving our attention to something. So when we're, and this is happening to more and more people, we tend to be, down in our frequency quite a bit, and nothing ever good happens. When is this going to change? And I hear that a lot during sessions. When is it going to change? And it's like, when do you want it to change? Right? I'm excited for you. When do you want it to change? And they're looking at me like, well, when it's done. I just want this done. I said, then choose it. Choose what you want. And this is something that intellectually doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but once you experience it, you will never forget it, and there's no going back. And that's what I want for everyone, is to understand the nature of who they are and their potential and their power, and that they can be and do and have anything. And that's a promise. That's just not airy-fairy talk. You have to put that into practice, and you have to work your focus to get there. But where I see people is they're going, oh yeah, I can be or do or need everything. They're in need mode. And so that perpetuates the elusiveness of ever having anything. You're just perpetuating need, right? So, there's more going on in everyone that they just don't get. They don't understand. And the energy that they are has the ability to create a new life in the blink of an eye. But their structure keeps minimized.
I was going to touch on that. Are there limits though? We go back to not necessarily to purpose, but also to what is for our greater good, and spirit knows. So let's give an example. Somebody who has a life purpose which they don't discover, but their life purpose is actually a non-material one, but they've decided through free will to direct their energy solely and completely down the material realm, and they direct their energy towards, I want to be a billionaire. It doesn't necessarily mean for me that they will, because yes, they will achieve material gains and quite considerable amounts of them, I would say. But if something is completely adversarial to their greater good universally, in terms of their soul path, I'm not convinced that no matter how much you direct your energy, if it's not within if it's totally contrary to some soap opera, you're not going to become a billionaire, but you'll become something very close to it. But that ultimate objective may not, because it's not within your soul's path to greater good, universally speaking, eternally, infinitely existing.
That's interesting, because
Would you say that has that validity, or is that not the case?
I don't see it that way. Doesn't mean it's not valid, because everything is possible. I just think that's very limiting, and we limit it based on something that, oh, the soul might not want that. So we may be here in physical form, here to experience everything physical as much as we can, because that's the big adventure here. That's why we've got human bodies. But no, you can't do that, because the soul might decide that using your free will to choose only works part of the time. Right?
Yeah, that's true.
If you have free will, you have free will across the board. The soul isn't going to say, oh, no, you didn't come here for that. You're not getting that. Sorry. Why would it? You're eternal. You might go off on a different path due to free will and say, yeah, I think I want this life. This looks like fun. Let me play with my power and see what I can conjure up. And the soul will just sit back and say, okay, I'll just sit here and wait, right? It's not going to say, no, you can't have it, because then it would be violating the free will. Suddenly the free will isn't free anymore. It's free only if you do what I want, right? So yeah, I see it. I just see it differently. It doesn't mean that I'm right and someone else is wrong. It just means it's different. So that in itself shows us that everything is possible.
Yeah.
Every variation of what you just said is possible, right?
Yeah, I agree. It's a kind of case of be careful what you wish for, what you direct your energy for, because you might just get it.
Yeah.
I don't know how much time we have left, but we want to touch on the Council of 12, because I know that you're linked with them. Could you explain what the council is, and your link to them, your relationship with the council on a spiritual and energy level, and the role they've played in purpose in your in this lifetime, I guess, and I suppose beyond and before.
You know, they've been with me this lifetime since I can remember. I just never determined that they were a group or there were 12, right? It just reached a point in time where I just called them the Council of 12. It's what they are, because we have to use human labels in order to make the determination when really everything is all the same, right? It's just that higher stream of consciousness that everyone has access to. I'm not doing anything magical or mysterious. We all have that wherewithal in us. Now, a lot of my clients actually had told me that the council, when they start coming through with their messaging, sounds very much like Abraham, you know, Esther Hicks into Abraham. I didn't know who that was. So, you know, after a while of hearing this, I had to go and research, and I sat back and my hair was blown back, let me tell you. I was like, whoa, okay, so I'm on to something. So they're my greatest teachers, and I use they loosely. It's a powerful energy that just takes on so many different vibrations. I always know when it's them I'm working with, because I can tell by the higher frequency. You know, I sit up and take notice and pay attention. I'm a good student, right? But yeah, they're always present, and it is just a higher stream of consciousness that likes to come through and remind people, who they truly are, what is within them, and their potential. And they have the tools to help people to step into the lives that they wish they had. And they take great joy in that, because anytime we exercise our power, play with our power, and begin to understand our power, they know that they're teaching well. The one thing
Mm.
that the council has always stressed, and every time I turn around, they're being proved right, is that we as human beings do things backwards. We think backwards, we
Mm.
live backwards, we believe backwards. And the biggest example, and it was their first example that they ever gave me of this, was that why would you mourn the passing of a loved one when they've just burst forward into their remembering, right? And
Mm.
yet we're overjoyed at the birth of a new soul, even though they're being birthed into their forgetfulness, which can be very trying and challenging and daunting in a lifetime. And so in that
Mm.
respect, we have it backwards. So there's so many different examples that they've given me. They are just the most wonderful, wonderful teachers. They've taught
Mm.
me so much, and they keep teaching me. And sometimes they can be frustrating, I have to tell you, on a human level, because I'll ask a question and they'll just shrug it off, right? It's like, well, if you haven't figured that one out, we'll just stand here and watch you figure it out. But they don't do it for you. Like I hear from people, well, don't your guides ask your guides if you should do something? And the guides that we have aren't meant to direct traffic and make choices for us.
Mm.
They're there to get you to trust yourself. So they'll always direct things to you. That's when you know that you've got a true guide at work with you, is that they'll just keep
Mm.
putting it back on you. And they'll be very patient. They don't get frustrated. Yeah. So the
Yeah.
council is just that higher frequency that is just ever so much fun. And I wish everybody would do it.
Yeah, they're great, actually. I love the council.
Yeah.
So I just want to say, Ara has written many, many books, and I actually have a couple, I'm not in front of me, it's my mistake. But can you just go through, just run through the books that you've written, particularly the last one that you're working on now, the last one.
Yeah.
Where do you plan taking your authoring life in the future?
Whew. I haven't chosen that yet. I'm
Yeah.
still pondering. I'm still dabbling in all possibilities. So I'm excited, and that's the way I want to be, because I know the instant that spark comes in, I'll know exactly where I'm going. And in the meantime,
Mm.
I'm just trying different things on for size and see how they feel. So that's fun too. It's an adventure. The last book that I've written is actually an offering from the Council of 12. It's called Everyday Wisdom.
Yeah,
And
that's the one that I have.
yeah,
Yeah.
and just as I had said that the council teaches us that we do everything backwards, this book is a book to keep on your bedside table, so that
Mm.
if you're pondering something, if you're upset about something, if you're wondering how to deal with something, you look up the word, and the council gives you the other side of the coin regarding that word. So what it's meant to do is to help you shift perspective so that you're using your power um, in a better way, in a more beneficial way that will help you get the answers that you're asking for.
Mm.
So it's I love it. I love it. And that one will be updated as more words come through. So
Yeah.
that's good. The book I'm working on right now that I seem to have been working on for years is called Health Beyond Reason. And it is a vehicle for people to begin to understand the nature of their energetic body and how the chakra system works and how disease enters into the mix,
Mm.
and how to shift that energy. So I'm not in a health modality. So why it's taking me so long, because I'm such a little human sometimes, is that the council will say something and I'll go, huh, well, how does that work? And I'll need to ferret out all the information. I'll need to have my conversations with them. I'll need evidence as to what they're saying, even though I've learned to trust. It needs to make sense to me. So that's why it's kind of a tedious project, because I'm just so inquisitive. So that one might not be out for a while.
Yeah, yeah. And I know you're one of the co-creators of Virtual Vision FM, which actually was where I was the show where I met, not physically, but I was listening to her for a long time on that show. It's back in, I think, when you first started it. I started watching it. I don't even know, I can't remember how I stumbled across that, but I did. And I loved the show. I know it's not as active as it used to be now, but any plans for that, or something alternative?
You know, we have brought it back sporadically, and you know, I need to speak with my co-host Ted Woodruff at some point. It just seems that to re-engage with virtual vision, I would want to take it into a different direction. I'd want to lift the energy of it, and I haven't quite figured out what that is yet. So it's still in hiatus. Hopefully I'll get things sorted soon, but for the time being, I'm just going to leave it on the shelf until it's clear within me where it's best to take it to serve good, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I'm running out of time with you, Ara. So I want to close it there. I hope everyone enjoyed this conversation, I think, rather than interview. I like it to have a conversation. I will put the link to araparisien.com. Please visit Ara on that website, and also the links to her Facebook pages. Have a look at those as well. And I'll also, at the end of this video, be just cascading Ara's books, of which there are many. And they are really easy to read. They're not huge, thick volumes as well. They're easy to consume. So please reach out, and they're all available on Amazon, I think, Ara. I think they're all on Amazon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So please reach out to her. She's an absolute genuine psychic medium and much more. And there aren't many of them around, and Ara is one of those unique individuals. And I'll say that straight from the heart. So please reach out to if you need anything. The details will be in the detail column, details of the video. And I want to say thanks, Ara. Thanks so much again for offering to be my first interview on this channel. I was a little bit nervous doing that because I didn't really know, wasn't aware how it was going to work out. But I think it's been really good. I've enjoyed it. I hope you have. And I just say thanks so much.
Well, thank you. I did enjoy it. And I have to say you're a natural.
Yeah, you're saying that. Money's in the post. But no, thanks a lot, Ara. Much love to you, and love to everyone else. Thanks so much, and we'll chat soon. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.